All right, welcome to another episode of the Elevator Talk Show. Imagine having to speak your second language forever, living in another country, developing your career. What is it like, and what can we do to make that easier, for instance, in Sweden or all over Europe? That is the subject today. And I am Åsa Rydhard, executive trainer and global speaker. I am on a mission to elevate experts into leaders on the business stage. And this show is a platform for that. People who are or want to be elevators meet and share insights that will elevate us all. So today's guest is Joana Campos. Welcome into the studio, Joana.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Åsa. How are you?
I am very fine. I'm very fine. So, for you who don't know Joanna, Joanna is a PhD candidate at Lund University and she is a bioprocess engineer. Please tell us a little bit about bioprocessing and how you want to use that in the future, changing the world.
Exactly. Bioprocess engineering is taking everything that nature gives us and making something out of it that is of our interest. For example, something that I focus on is the use of microorganisms to produce chemicals. In this
Mhm.
moment in my PhD thesis, I'm using lactic acid bacteria to eat wood. Yes, the wood that we can find in the forests,
Ah,
in all the construction that is left out.
mhm.
Lactic acid, which is one of the most used chemicals in food, cosmetics, etc., etc. So I do that in my PhD.
Yeah. So tell me how you see that it might be of use for us in the world in the future.
Nowadays, we are seeing a trend of going natural, of
Mhm.
going back to nature. And bioprocess engineering, although it's in engineering, it is man made, it's about using natural resources to produce everything that back in the days was produced via chemicals or in a very industrialized. Uh, man-made situation. So I'm very happy that we can now have use our natural resources to bring more natural resources into applications.
Yes, I'm asking you because I actually read about something similar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they have developed a chemical or a powder, whatever, in India, which helps the farmers to get rid of wood, you know, biological rest leftovers instead of putting up, doing the fires. So they reduce
Yes,
the amount of smoke. Yeah, am I
it
on the
is
wrong track?
very possible. You
Hmm.
might have heard very correctly because, for example, we know that in nature, wood degrades very, very slowly throughout the
Hmm.
years. Imagine if we have a powder that is a microorganisms, for example, that can degrade the wood 20 times faster. That
Yeah,
makes
that's I love all these kind of solutions, and when I meet elevators like you who do something to, you know, move everything forward and create a sustainable environment, I'm so happy and inspired. And it's the big difference in India, for instance. I'm not sure if everyone has been ever flying to India, but I did once. And even before we landed up in space, when we started to go in for landing, you could feel the smell of all the fires of Bombay. So it's a huge problem for them with the smoke from the fires when the farmers, they light all the fires to clean up their space. So small things make a big change.
Yes, indeed, I completely agree.
Mm.
And nowadays, fire is not the best way to produce energy. So we need to find our ways to make it useful.
Yeah, and this was not even for energy. It was just of getting rid of things.
Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah,
getting rid of residues.
yeah,
No, there's residues are the new products.
yeah, yeah. So we are not going to talk about that today, but I just want to mention that you are such a busy lady and you're one of those very ambitious young women I have the honor to know. You're also the vice president of Spot Nordic.
Yes, I am. Spot Nordic is the Portuguese graduate association in the Nordic countries. So, our goal at Spot Nordic is to bring together all the Portuguese graduates that work in the Nordic countries, whatever Nordic country it is, to connect this network and to make it work as well for the country that we all love, Portugal, back home. But we really enjoy the countries that have received us so well. We don't want to leave, but we still want to make it a little bit like home.
Yay! So not only are you a PhD student, you are a PhD student in Sweden at Lund University. So how did you end up as a PhD student in Sweden?
Well, Osa, I 10 years ago, I was here in Sweden as well, in Lund, doing my master thesis in a company very nearby where I live. So I fell in love with Sweden right away 10 years ago. And after a while, I was in Portugal. I had to go back to Portugal for work. And I needed a career change. I needed to grow, and I was looking for opportunities. And I realized that a PhD would be the best opportunity. And
Mhm.
what best to go back to a country that I learned to like to do a PhD. So that's how I ended up in Sweden 4 years ago to do my PhD in chemical engineering.
Aha. Well, I'm glad you did because that's how I met you. And the reason for why I invited you into this show today is because a few weeks ago I saw your post on LinkedIn about the how you experienced the language barrier at Lund University. And to be honest, when I read that post and the article that belonged to that post, I was rather shocked. This might be a hard word, but very surprised, because it told me that English so far is not being used that much at the faculties, which makes you not included as a English speaking student.
I have to say that it startled me as well when I started my PhD. It's now getting better, but as a staff member as well, because in Sweden, the PhD students are not only students, but also staff members. It is a different perspective from the international students that are doing their bachelor's or their master's.
Yeah, I must add here the reason for why I was surprised is that I've have a long career. Now I could use the word long. I've been out there for many years. I worked for Volvo. I worked for different kind of consultancy companies, and we always used English all these years. English is the concern language, and in Sweden, I just did a quick search and found out that 40% of the international students in Sweden are of the PhD students in Sweden, they are international. So that's a huge number, right? And
Exactly.
yeah, and I found out that at Lund University, 25% of the students are international.
I
And
did the same research and I found this exactly
you
the same.
Yeah, and this is this is incredible because I know that Swedish universities, at least, they work a lot. They are supposed to work with not only inclusivity but also with democracy, and the students are supposed to, have a saying in what's going on in the university world, in the, how it's arranged, all this kind of politics. So not having things ordered and communicated in English, I was baffled.
Let me tell you then what I
Hmm.
found.
Yeah, please
The
do that.
the information that comes into the websites and that is reviewed by everyone is in its majority, let's say 90% bilingual,
Hmm.
Swedish and English.
Hmm.
And we are very happy about that as a first comer that approaches the university for the first time. But
Yes.
then when you start to grow into the university and as a staff member, when you want to be the member of the PhD student union, when you want to be a student representative in the management boards, you find challenges.
Hmm.
For example, all the documents that we have in those meetings in the management of the university have to be in Swedish
Hmm.
because a Swedish university is a state-owned university. So
Yes.
it has to be everything in Swedish.
Hmm.
But then one thing is the written document that we can somewhat easily nowadays translate into whatever language we want using Google Translator. We
Hmm.
know that that works quite well nowadays, and other types of translator websites. The problem is the conversation, because the discussions happen when we interact with each other in person, right? Or in person or in video right now. Thank you so much for inviting me, Osa. And those conversations sometimes were not happening in English. And people were actually saying no to international students that were not able to speak in Swedish. So when
Uh-huh.
I wanted to become a student representative in my first years at university, because I decided I am not going to just be a PhD student focused on my research, I want to develop as a person. And when I decided to be a student representative, I couldn't, because as an international student that does not speak Swedish, they didn't take me. Fortunately, that changed.
Yeah, but just recently.
Exactly. I would
Mhm.
say 2 years ago when I was accepted and the management changed.
So how, because you said this is like my experience of the language barrier. How do you think it really, how is it affecting you personally?
I would like to be able to be part of the decisions and to understand how decisions are made, not only as a person that is part of the student community, but also as someone that pays taxes here in Sweden, right? And it's not only about the Swedish community that has to have their documents in Swedish. Yes,
Hmm.
we are not questioning that. It's also about the international community that is growing in Sweden, not only in terms of students, but also in general, in the general community. It's very important that we have some resources available, and whether we like it or not, English has become the second language.
Yeah, and that's such an, I'm glad you said that, whether we like it or not, because we have brought in another guest today to give us a little perspective on from the Swedish side. So I want to welcome into this conversation Maria Appelqvist.
Hello.
Hi, Maria. Hello, Maria.
Hey,
So,
nice to see
yeah,
you both.
Maria,
Thank you.
thank you so. I know you have a busy day with all your work at the Malmö Högskola and so on. So thank you for taking your time showing up here. And I know you have a long academic career starting out in Umeå University, and now you are a professor and a PhD at the Malmö University. Tell us a little bit what you think about this situation with English in the Swedish Academy.
Well, it was very interesting to hear you talking about this because there is um, having English being spoken is a matter of inclusion. And actually, there was once upon a time I moved from Umeå to Malmö exactly for that reason that I wanted to be part of an international environment. And for me, Malmö University at that time represented that. I also were in a faculty where it was quite natural. We had students from all over the world. So in the morning I was teaching in Swedish, and in the afternoon I was teaching in English. So
Mhm.
I had colleagues from other parts of the world. So it was quite natural that we had English also as a working language. I had yeah, it was just natural for me. And then when I transitioned into leadership and organization where I'm now, we are on the faculty of urban studies, and basically we have all our staff meeting, they are in English today.
Oh.
So it's part of an inclusive policy. When it comes to documentation, also from meetings, like Joanna was saying, it has to be in Swedish, but usually they are also translated into English. Um, uh, Maybe sometimes later than sooner, but usually they are also being translated. So I think from the Malmö University, I don't know if it's for the whole university or it's just my faculty. It's part of an inclusive policy of in alignment with the idea of Malmö University and internationalization. Like like you said, there is not only 40% of PhD students are from other countries. We also have staffs that are from other country. And in order to be able to also hire staff that are competent and be able to compete with the Swedish ones, we have to open up also for, possibilities to speak more English. So
Yeah.
that's how it is.
Yeah. So what would you say is the reason for why this development into, like in Lund University and perhaps also other universities, that has gone so slow?
Well, I think it's okay. So here we could see, for instance, in Malmö, have been maybe started earlier or being more proactive in that sense because it's a younger university. And you have Lund and Uppsala and Umeå, which is these traditional universities. They are more structured in their hierarchy and in their culture. So maybe it's easier to change the culture, because it's always sort of transforming in Malmö University. It's always been this kind of finding to position themselves, and also when it comes to internationalizations. But of course, it's not like pain-free, because we do have staff also that have limited capacities for participating fully in English. And it's one thing to hear English and receive it and understand it, and another thing is to express yourself. But then, so sometimes meetings happens bilingual, like in smaller groups. So in starting groups, people are speaking English because there's an English-speaking person there. And in other groups, people are speaking Swedish because, so very much it's also fluctuation. Like for instance, in our staff meetings in leadership and organization, when certain people are present, we speak English. When they're not present, we speak Swedish.
Yeah. So I know there is a lot of resistance, or there are some resistance on and off. And one thing people cling on to is that they want to preserve the English language. But on the other hand, I firsthand know that so much of the English literature is the study literature is in English. So it's hard to just say that everything should be in Swedish, because that will never happen. And others thinks that, but those who comes to Sweden should learn Swedish. But I think that's a lot to ask, Joanna, because you come to Sweden to study for like a PhD, the books are in English, and then also learn Swedish. Is that how would that work for you as a student?
Well, I am biased because when I arrived, I wanted to learn Swedish. I think that when a person moves to another country and wants to be part as well, and it's one of the great things about meeting other cultures and meeting other countries, is being able to absorb some of the language. But as Maria was saying, one thing is to speak a little bit of the language for practical reasons, and another thing is to be able to express yourself, and sometimes in such technical language as necessary for the management of a university.
Yeah, I know. So there is a little bit personal resistance also. You don't think as a Swedish person that you speak well enough English, right? So you're a bit shy and afraid. Is that necessary? Do you think, both of you can answer this? Is that necessary?
Well, I think, as individuals, people are very different, and some people have, great self-esteem and don't care. It's like language is communication, and for others, it feels embarrassing for them. So I think it's more of your personality. I think it's a personality issue, how you're being like open of just seeing this is a matter of communication, and I'm doing my very best.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
So if both of you would give one last, an inspirational tips for the expat community, for the Swedish community about this language issue, what would you like people to know or think?
I would like to say that we should first of all try to embrace the country that receive us. I am very grateful to everything that Sweden has given me. And second, I would say we need to be flexible with each other. We all make mistakes. It's human to make mistakes, and it is important to remind ourselves that communication is a very important part, is an essential part of everyone's life. And of course, at the university, we are not competing within the country, are not competing within the university. We are competing with the world. We have to think about all the material, all the science and knowledge that is outside. So whether we like it or not, we have to go English.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joana. I love speaking to you. And Maria, do you have something short to add in the end?
I think it's just being open-minded. I think it's again like this whole like, do we want to have a bilingual environment? It's more about being, are you open, or like, you're open to change. And I think that's something we're learning from the current world we're living in, is that I have to be open and flexible. And I think that goes for both Swedish and expats as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to you both for taking your time and showing up and sharing your thoughts for this interesting conversation. I enjoyed it very much. And in this talk show, and explore this subject even more episodes. So thank you for listening today, and